Noah Presgrove, which is also, like you were just saying, not a crime, but there's a lot of people talking about it online. Not that it's controversial, but a lot of people just have opinions. Um, so we'll get into that one. It's another mysterious death.
From the brother's perspective, he feels like something much more sinister might have happened, that people at this party know something but just aren't saying.
I believe this is his tooth right here. His pants were folded up on that square mark.
His pants were there. His tooth was right there in that circle.
I believe so, yeah. And his body was here. And he was in the fetal position, facing that way.
Have you ever heard them say foul play is suspected?
I've heard suspected of foul play, suspicious death. And again, they don't tell me everything because they don't want to ruin the investigation, but they said that they've got a couple of people in mind on the situation, and that they're really looking in on them.
So Noah Presgrove was 19 years old when he was found dead along Highway 81 in Jefferson County, Oklahoma on September 4th, 2023. It's crazy that this happened a year ago, too. I feel like, well, not a full year ago, but last year. It just seems like it's been coming around within the last month, I'd say. People were messaging us about it more and more.
I guess especially too because I know that the autopsy, like I think the family were made aware of the autopsy earlier this month, and then it's come out just recently for the public documents. So maybe once, because I feel like there's no answers from the autopsy, which you would expect there should be. So maybe that's why it's just gaining more and more traction, even though
even crazy
happened a while ago.
How long the family has gone without like any answers at all, considering the autopsy like just came out.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. Yeah, it took so long for essentially no answers.
Yeah. Okay, so some background about Noah. Noah Alexander Presgrove. He was born on May 14th, 2004. Oh, his birthday would have been a few days ago. It's the 16th. He was born in Duncan, Oklahoma. His father is Victor Presgrove, and his mother is Casey Elliott. Noah's family is a blended family now. There's step-parents, step-siblings. And it seems like he has like 8 siblings, according to his obituary.
Yeah, so I think that the father and mother aren't together anymore. Like I tried to work out who is who, but a lot of them have even other last names. So, and I've read different things, like some refer to as like their brother, their stepbrother. But yeah, a very blended family from different step-parents as well.
The family spent summers with their grandmother, and they would go tubing and water skiing. Noah, for school sports, he did a lot. He did track, cross country. He also played football, and he participated in wrestling as well. So very active. Noah's brother Dalen said that his brother was a jokester, but never at somebody else's expense. He also said he was the class clown and most likely to get detention, but also the most popular, the most athletic. So at the age of 17, Noah became emancipated from his parents and he went to live with his grandmother. So this info about Noah is from his obituary. It said Noah had a very outgoing personality. He was very spontaneous and he was both a country boy and a ladies' man. I love that in an obituary. He loved the outdoors and anything to do with water. He also loved skateboarding. Noah was a true friend to all who knew him. He was an accomplished athlete at Comanche High School, where he lettered in football, wrestling, cross country, and track. He attended Ray of Hope Church. So his brother Dalen got a job at his high school, where Noah was a student, and the two became closer towards the end of Noah's life. His brother said, between class periods, I got the chance to see Noah going through the hallways. I got to spend more time with him and build that brotherhood. Often, Noah could be seen in a beat-up red truck that had a penchant for stalling out, but his brother says that instead of paying to get it fixed, that he would push start it everywhere he went. Noah graduated in 2023, and he took a gap year while he figured out what he wanted to do. He couldn't afford college, so he started looking into wrestling scholarships, and he also considered careers in welding or working on a shrimp boat in Texas. So over the Labor Day holiday in 2023, Noah attended a house party that lasted 4 days in Terrell, Oklahoma. There's a lot of public pictures and videos from the party. In 2 of the videos, Noah can be seen daring his friends to slap him across the face outside of the house. He repeatedly insisted that his friend hit him, and eventually the friend gave him a light tap before sprinting away in fear of retaliation. So all the pictures and videos, it's just kind of like typical stuff.
Looks messy. All the photos are on the blog too. There's a blog for this. So, like, yeah, they like writing on his butt with text. It's just messy. Like, it looks
It
like
just
a
seems like
messy
any
teenage
like
party.
pictures that you would have gone and taken at parties in high school.
Yeah.
Like nothing groundbreaking. Yeah, it looks like sloppy, messy kids drinking, but not necessarily out of the norm, I guess. But the fact that it was a 4-day party is a little crazy.
Yeah. And also too, like, I feel like, because I'm prefacing what you're going to say. A lot of the information that we have about the party is from the autopsy report, which is weird because there was a lot of people there, but it doesn't really seem like anyone is actually talking about exactly what happened. They're all I'm sure they are amongst themselves, but publicly, there's not like, it hasn't really been confirmed what happened at the party. A lot of the information that we've had is from the autopsy report, which is interesting.
Yeah, and there's a lot of just like some people are talking, but just like a lot of hearsay and really no actual like information. So another photo appeared to show a teenager holding a rifle in the background. So I mean that's not very normal, but I don't know what goes on in Oklahoma. But yeah, there's one kid like holding a rifle in the background. Um, there's pictures where a lot of the guys seem to like not be wearing shirts for whatever reason. Maybe it was hot.
Yeah.
Um, there's pictures where Noah has writing literally like all over his chest and stomach. In this party, it was at his best friend Jack Newton's house, right?
Yeah.
So I think the family, this is what I've read on Reddit from people from there, that that family is like a big name in the
Prominent
area.
family.
So I'm guessing they're pretty wealthy. Some people are saying it reminds them similar to the Murdochs, how this family is allegedly a similarly prominent family like the Murdoch family was. And a lot of people believe that Stephen Smith's death, who was someone known to the younger Murdoch boys, the sons, Buster, he died in a similar way to Noah, and it was said to be like a hit and run, but a lot of people believe it wasn't a hit and run. So I think that death was maybe being looked into again, but people were making some comparisons between this.
I didn't really think about that, but it definitely makes sense. And also, like, I think it's insinuated that because this family may be prominent, well known in the community, they're able to kind of cover some things up exactly like the Murdochs do.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. They had a massive party for 4 days with a bunch of kids underage drinking.
Yeah, drinking, yeah.
And I don't know if the parents were there. I couldn't really tell from what's been said and what I've read, but it's not like they got in trouble or anything, it seems. Guess they have bigger problems. So according to the autopsy report, Noah had been drinking and rode an ATV Ranger vehicle with several men that had a rollover incident. This, for some reason, there's like no details about, and I feel like it'd be very important. I'm assuming the police know more, but apparently there was some ATV accident where they rolled it. Nothing is said about how bad it was, if anyone was like seriously injured. All that said is that Noah went back to the party after this happened, but we don't know if it was damaged, if anyone broke anything, if anyone was bleeding, or if everyone was literally fine and it wasn't a big deal. No idea.
Yeah, I'd love to know more, and I haven't really been able to find anything more. Like, you would think if
No,
there
it's
was
weird.
a rollover, like, there would probably be some photos. I don't know, but I haven't seen anything.
Yeah. See, I can't decide if like the lack of information is sketchiness or just that it was like apparently the
big
ATV
deal.
accident happened at 3 a.m. and if these kids have been drinking like for days, I'm sure they weren't all like paying attention or thinking of to notate things. I don't know. So Jack Newton, who's Noah's best friend, his family is the one we were just discussing. He was at the party because it was at his house. He said that he was asleep when Noah disappeared, and Jack said it was his ATV that was in the accident. He wrote in a message to another friend, quote, "All of our close friends said that he wrecked my SXS I had there around 3." So Noah was still alive following the incident, and he went back to the party where he got into an argument with his girlfriend. And I've seen people and family members say, like, this wasn't his girlfriend. I've seen people say his girlfriend wasn't at the party, his girlfriend was at home. But then I've also seen the people were also saying that he doesn't have a girlfriend. So I don't know.
And just also too, the actual words of "still alive" following the incident. That is a quote from the autopsy report. So they have like a bit of a, I guess, scene report of what leads up to him being found dead. But like, because it is kind of weird to say he was still alive. Well, clearly he was still alive because he went back to the party and this happened. But that is what is written in the autopsy report.
Yeah. So Jack said, still talking about the incident, said, and he was super dirty and super drunk. So a couple of girls helped him into the shower. And I noted that this seemed like it could be true because when his body was found, pretty much all of those signatures that were on his chest that I mentioned were gone. So either he sweat them off or they were washed off somehow. But he did still have one little stick figure on him, I guess, somewhere. Jack also went on to say when he got out of the shower, he wanted to sleep in one of the girls' beds, and she said no, and that upset him, and he walked off. So allegedly then he left the party, and he was never seen alive again. Noah was found dead early in the morning of September 4th. The autopsy report describes like the scene where his body was found, and this is what it says. The decedent was a 19-year-old male who was found on the southbound side of a highway by a passing truck driver on September 4th, 2023, at approximately 05:53 hours. He was, so is that's 5 a.m., right? Well, like almost 6 a.m.?
Yeah, nearly 6 a.m.
So he was alive at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
He was naked and was only wearing unmatching shoes. There was a pair of shorts found several feet from the decedent and was reported to be his. So,
It's quite poorly written, but basically
he was found naked with two different shoes on.
Yeah, that's all he was wearing was the two shoes, and then his shorts were found near him. They said the shorts found were his.
Yeah, but he wasn't wearing them.
No.
Additionally, there were 3 pieces of a white metal chain, as well as part of a tooth present several feet from the decedent. Also, there was a clump of hair found within one of the lanes of the highway several feet from the decedent. Additionally, a clump of hair was observed on the right buttock without blood or tissue. The paved highway consisted of 2 lanes with shoulders on both sides and a speed limit of 65 miles per hour. The highway was poorly lit at night. There were no vehicle parts or debris observed on the scene. And then it just goes on to say that further investigation said that he was at a house party. That's where it says the ATV incident rollover and that he possibly got into a fight with a girl. And that he left the party. He was not found until the morning. This annoyed me because, one, it doesn't say, is the tooth his tooth? Is the hair his hair?
I feel like the tooth, we'll get into it, but it was definitely his
I think
teeth,
the tooth is his, but the hair is like never
the hair is his, yeah.
brought up again. So in the full report, the medical examiner said that Noah died of multiple blunt force injuries to the head, neck, torso, and extremities, and that he also had swelling of the brain with multiple brain lacerations, including on the cerebellum and temporal lobe. It also says, quote, basal skull fractures splitting the middle base of skull in 2 parts, and multiple rib fractures. A molar tooth had broken in half, and he had also sustained a laceration on the left surface of the tongue, along with 4 cervical neck fractures. So it seems like a lot of injuries.
Yeah.
I wonder if the tongue lacerations from like if he bit his tongue from like during whatever happened. So, and then the tooth mention makes us think that the tooth that they found there would be the rest of the cracked tooth.
Yeah, I think so.
So Noah, who was naked, was found wearing only mismatched shoes, like we said. One was an Adidas on his left and a Hey Dude shoe on his right, each with grass and debris clumped in the laces per the autopsy report. The 3 pieces of a white metal chain and part of a tooth were several feet from his body, along with the pair of white printed shorts. There's pictures, too, that we'll post on the blog and on Instagram that are from when the police were there. There's like spray painted lines that show where his body was and where like the tooth and whatever else was is circled in the picture, so you could kind of get a better idea. and there is like a tiny bit of blood.
Yeah, it
Not a lot,
seems
though.
weird that for these amount of injuries that there is literally like a spot of like I don't want to say a spot. It's like a tiny pool of blood. You would think there would be blood everywhere based on these injuries, but
You wouldn't even
essentially
notice it if
no.
you
Like
weren't
it's
looking
hardly
for it.
even like it's hardly even distinguishable that it's blood. Like when you look at it, you're like, oh yeah, okay, I can kind of see it because they've spray painted it. But like if you were just walking along the road, you wouldn't say, oh my god, there's a pool of blood. It's literally like a patch of
A
kind of
smudge.
yeah, basically.
So it does also say a drawing in black ink of a stick figure person was etched into the side of his right thigh. So it's not really that shocking because he did have drawings all over him. At first, before I knew he had all the signatures and drawings all over him, I was like, that's really weird. But he was covered in marker at one point. A toxicology report included with the autopsy showed that forensic toxicologists conducted a panel of tests for amphetamine, methamphetamine, fentanyl, cocaine, opiates, PCP, barbiturates, and benzos. None of the drugs were detected in his system, but alcohol was, obviously. The forensic toxicologist went on to note that the tests don't test for oxycodone, methadone, or clonazepam.
It's so weird to me that they test for all those things, but surely they could do a separate test for that just to rule out or, know
I
what
know, and I
actually
feel like
happened.
oxy would be like maybe a semi-common thing
Mm,
for kids to get their hands on.
yeah.
I mean, back when I was like in high school, there was definitely people who were doing oxycodone, and especially at big parties. Um, and that would, I feel like that'd be important to test for because if you do oxy and you're drinking on it from people that I know, um, I hated them when they would do that because they would get so fucking wasted and like black out and be belligerent. So I feel like that could have been an important one to test for. So back to Jack, the best friend whose house it was. He spoke about seeing Noah's injuries, and this is in a text. I don't know to who, but it was shared with Daily Mail. And the text says, "Bro, everyone that saw Noah at the viewing, including me, saw his face was beat up bad. I know what a beat up face looks like. Definitely not just me saying that. Everyone that saw him said that. Looks like he got beat up by 5 dudes. Other people who saw his body said it looked like his nose and cheek were broken." His brother said it still leaves a lot of things up in the air. An accident occurred and we don't know what the accident is, so the next approach is figuring out how it played out. It doesn't make sense that the investigation has been going on for so long and there were so many people around, and yet there's still so much uncertainty. And it doesn't make sense that a good person like Noah is gone in such a cruel and unknown way. Sarah Stewart of the Oklahoma Department of Public Safety confirmed to People in an email statement on May 2nd that the investigation is not over. However, following numerous interviews, investigators do not believe Noah was murdered.
I just wanted to like backtrack for 1 second because even though we spoke about the autopsy report, I should have put in like so we've spoken about the injuries that he had, but the actual cause of death was multiple blunt force injuries, but the manner was undetermined. So after
Yeah.
that is kind of why everyone is like there's no answers, even though he had all these injuries, and that's why they're saying the investigation isn't over. He died from the blunt force injuries, but they don't know how they occurred.
Right. So Noah's mother, Casey, has spoken to the media. She said to KSWO, "I need peace because I kill myself every day. Please, somebody, please. Just somebody, anybody." And his grandmother, Deborah Presgrove, told News Nation, bear with me, I'm going to read exactly what she said, but there's a lot of knows in this statement. So she says, "I have respect for law enforcement, but I just don't feel like they're doing enough right now." So then she went on to talk about asking the friends that were at the party for answers. And she said, "I've talked to a few myself, only the closest ones that I feel like I could, but not really getting nothing out of them. I mean, one of them, I've gotten a couple of stories, 2 different stories out of his mouth, and another one, I've gotten 3 different stories out of his mouth. So, which story is true? I just pray to God Jack, Noah's best friend, has nothing to do with it. In my heart, I just pray to God Jack has nothing to do with it. Because I love Jack. But that was Noah's best friend. And where was he? I mean, I hate to put that on him, but I just keeps going into my head. They've done wrong. They've done wrong. and they need to stand up and be a man. And be a man made it, regardless. She also said, it's, hard to believe that you can have friends like that and they all just stabbing you in the back. So I thought that was interesting because it's just interesting she's specifically talking about Jack.
Yeah.
I don't know my thoughts on
The
that.
grandmother has been very vocal online. Like, she posts a lot about what she thinks may have happened or possible scenarios, which we'll get into in a minute. But
I don't think she's like a reliable narrator.
No. And I guess like Noah was living with her at the time that he died. She was essentially, I guess, he was 19, so didn't need a guardian, but she had been caring for him. So she is her name's Deborah. You'll see her if you look up online. She speaks a lot about what she feels has
understandably
happened.
Emotional.
Yeah. So in terms of theories and discussion, obviously there are no answers in this yet. As we mentioned, his matter of death is undetermined. Cause of death was blunt force injuries. We don't know how he sustained the injuries. So as I mentioned, Deborah's online. She posts a lot about basically she thinks that maybe Noah was doing some things that other people at the party didn't like. So like one of her posts, she said, well, heard someone was getting a BJ that night, had words with Noah because he got caught, wonder who that adult was, and the young lady was doing it. It will come out one way or another.
So that's what I mean about her posts being a little like, okay.
And there's another one saying, I am hearing he was hit with a golf club in the head. I suppose nobody saw that either. So she is which I actually agree in terms of generally that people know what happened and they aren't talking about it, but she is giving specific scenarios about what she believes. So there are theories that include him possibly being pushed from the bed of a moving truck where the blood spot was, and then he kind of staggered along the road before he collapsed. The initial belief that he had maybe been involved in a hit and run, like I guess the initial theory was that he'd left the party drunk, he was on the highway and he got hit by a truck or a car, but they have ruled that out because it doesn't basically the injuries that he's had doesn't support that theory. There was no damage to his lower body, which you would think there would absolutely be if he was hit by a car.
Yeah.
So according to correspondence with investigators and the media, he suffered massive blunt force trauma to the back of his head, which caused skull fractures, but it didn't kill him. Instead, he died of internal bleeding in his torso, where he had several broken ribs and deep bruising on his left side. He also had what looked like road rash on his left shoulder and hip, and his fingers were torn up like he was desperately clinging onto something, which I guess that kind of maybe could be supported by being thrown from the truck if he was thrown and landed and kind of skidded it a little bit and had the road rash.
Also saying it looked like he could have been like dragged by something, like maybe just for example, if they took like the ATV out again and in a non-malicious way, if he was like sitting in, I don't know what kind of ATV it is, so I'm just using it as an example. If he was sitting in the back, lost balance and like his torso fell backwards and was like kind of being dragged, but his feet were still in. Then he was like using his hands to try to pull himself back up. Maybe that could have been something that happened, or like purposefully, if there was some sort of fight and they purposefully dragged him behind a truck or ATV, that would it would have to be by your feet because he has no injuries to his lower body, just his upper body. So it'd be like his back or torso that would be dragged. So could also be dragged from a vehicle. Maybe.
So when you the photos are on the blog, but I'll just describe. So basically there's two lines that have been spray painted which indicate that Noah's body was lying in between those two lines, and kind of just above those are the two circles where his teeth were found. But then the blood spot is like nowhere near, like it looks like it would be, I don't know, I'm just estimating by the photo, maybe like 15 feet or something like that away. Like it's not like the blood was found where he was laying, which is just an interesting, something to consider. It's
kind of further
kind
than
of a
that.
long scene of where he was found and these other bits of evidence were found.
Because in that picture, are the lines all the way down by the police car?
I don't know. It's weird because then
it's hard to see.
Yeah, it's hard to see from the photos that we have, unless, I don't know.
It looks almost like the lines are down by the police car.
Yeah, and if that is the case, then the blood is even further away. So
yeah.
Anyway,
it's also
it's just interesting to think that it's not kind of a tight seen, it was very spread out, which indicates maybe that he was, like it absolutely supports the drag theory, I think.
But you'd think there'd be more blood then.
Yeah, absolutely. I still can't figure that out.
I'm assuming it's his blood because, like, what are the chances? But, like, is it his blood for sure? They never really said.
Yeah. Well, it's insinuated that it is his blood, and I assume it probably is. But yeah, then I haven't seen it confirmed that a spot of his blood was found.
Mm-hmm.
So these are just some other theories that we've read. This is a comment from October 2023. So this is before the autopsy was released. It said, Noah apparently found on the side of the road and it was made to look like a hit and run. They have labelled the death as suspicious because it was looking like he was beaten and run over with an ATV and then placed there to hide what happened. It supposedly happened at a big 3-day party with tons of witnesses who are all quiet. They are saying that his friends did it, 3 brothers over a girl. So that's kind of interesting because that was a comment that came out very, very soon after all this happened and before we knew how he'd actually died.
And there allegedly was a fight with a girl, according to the autopsy report.
Yeah. There's another comment. This is from September 19. So again, just after this happened, the person wrote 2 weeks, 40 suspects, which that's what I'm assuming is how many people were at the party. Autopsy, toxicology, cell phones, still nothing. How? We know this was not a hit and run. He was beat up too bad for that. It must have taken several guys up to the homicide. We all know it all is. Go after the adults that supplied the alcohol and drugs to the minors and charge them with manslaughter. So that's kind of an interesting comment. There's another comment that says, I was told he got into a fight at the party and was walking down the road to cool off. The 2 guys that he got into a fight with followed him, jumped him, and basically beat him to death. It breaks my heart because I watched this kid grow up in the last 2 years of high school and he was so sweet. So again, I feel like, we've spoken about it before, always when the rumours are repeated, not always, I should say, generally when rumours are often repeated, there is some truth to them. It's always the same general story. So I do believe that maybe that is along the lines of what happened.
I do also think, so I just like keep thinking, like, as we're talking, like the hair, assuming it's his, say he did walk off and he just was wasted. Maybe he was more injured from the ATV incident than initially thought. Because, when you're drunk and you get hurt, you don't seem as hurt. Maybe he left, was walking on the road, and say, like, he fell because he was so drunk, just fell like flat on his face, right on his head. That could explain a lot of the injuries. But then how is there hair that's like clumps of hair that are pulled out? Like the clumps of hair is very hard to explain because you literally have to really pull that out. Even if you got hit by a car, would you necessarily lose clumps of hair?
It does sound like there was some type of violent altercation where people grabbing, or I don't know. That's all I can think in terms of the hair.
Yeah.
So a doctor, obviously no one knows what happened. We are all assuming, we're all speculating, but Dr. Stuart Fisher has been interviewed by the media. He's an internist doctor with extensive experience in emergency medicine. So maybe he has some idea what could have happened.
The injuries.
He basically said that the injuries that Noah suffered were so catastrophic and varied that him being mortally wounded in a severe beating was the most likely cause. He said the poor kid never had a chance. These injuries are not amenable to surgery at all, not at the same time. He said there are 5 and possibly up to 10 potentially life-ending injuries. It's not just one. He said the skull fractures were the most serious injuries and were so severe that they were unlikely to have been caused by one impact. I guess, maybe being hit by a car or one blow to the head or something like that. It indicates that there were multiple blows. He said that one extensive skull fracture ran across Noah's head, splitting the middle base of the skull in 2, and there were multiple smaller ones, with investigators described his head as being caved in. He had around 20 mils or around 0.68 ounces of blood poured inside his head from a brain bleed and damage to 4 parts of his brain. Dr. Fisher said this is very unusual for air to enter the skull. My guess would be injury by several different things at the same time, namely several different people at the same time. He said that basically it was unlikely that one person caused all the injuries because they were far in excess of what was needed to kill him. He said they would have had to keep going a lot longer than needed, like those cases where people are stabbed 50 times. It's very difficult to break a skull. He said the broken neck that Noah had, where his C1 vertebrae was displaced, could have killed him by itself if it was bad enough. And he, quote, said, it's like when someone is hanged by a rope. And the doctor also said that he was shocked about how little blood was at the scene, because basically he said, really? Well, maybe the body was moved. There would be pools of blood, and if you're not seeing that, an explanation could be that's what happened. If you're hit with enough force to crack a skull and cause a basal skull fracture, you would think there's something at the scene that's more than a paper cut, but there's nothing, and it could mean the body was moved. So the doctor does also confirm that it is possible that Noah was pushed from the back of a truck or that he fell. He said it's possible if he was thrown from a car, you might get the body rolling and therefore injuries throughout the whole body as opposed to it being confined to one area. So obviously this doctor doesn't know, but just as from his expert opinion, that that scenario or those scenarios could explain the injuries that Noah had.
I really don't know. I think kids are dumb, and the fact that nothing has really come out is interesting. I don't know if police like subpoenas people's phones. I've seen comments saying that like some people, I don't know if they like willingly gave up their phones or some phones were looked at, but I do think kids this age are dumb and will talk. So I bet that if police really subpoenaed people's phones, they would maybe find out some more.
Yeah.
If not, I feel like as this goes on, like people who know something are gonna mess up eventually. It was a big party. I get that they were wasted, but I do have faith that if someone knows what happened, someone's gonna mess up and talk.
I do, like, as this is, like, I've been kind of following this, like, not super closely until we've decided to do this episode, but I had been kind of following it, and like everyone's like, it's a mysterious death, and I'm like, oh, you know what, it sounds like he was drunk, he probably did get hit by a car, but now it really, really doesn't seem that way. It does seem like there is something that's being covered up or hidden. You cannot explain those injuries as an accident.
My two like main general theories are if it was an accident, like the ATV accident, depending how bad that was, that could explain more of his injuries.
That was my initial thought too. Maybe he was badly injured. You know, like people often after a really bad accident can still get up and walk away and then pass away later. Like,
especially if you're drunk because you don't realize what's going on.
This is like not the same. But I don't know if you remember what's his name? Liam Neeson's wife had the skiing accident. She refused to go to hospital because she was fine, and then she ended up dying because her head injury was so bad, but she didn't realize. So I feel like sometimes you just think you're okay when there's things going on that just take a while to come to the forefront.
I thought you were going to talk about one of your favorite cases, the guy whose son like axed him in the head, but he still got up and started doing
the
stuff.
Porco murder case. So the guy hit him in the head with an axe, and it didn't kill him straight away, but he went and did things like he loaded the dishwasher, and he kind of went about his daily routine before he died, like, I don't know, half an hour later, because it wasn't a immediately fatal blow to the head, which is wild. Like, imagine that you can unload the dishwasher with an axe in your head, or just having had an axe in your head. So I agree. I did think that maybe the ATV accident was more severe and he wandered and died, but I don't know. I feel like something must have happened after the ATV accident now.
The only thing is, because they said his C4 was injured, because I'm like, would that paralyze you? But maybe not at the time. Yeah, back to what I was saying, like, if his injuries from the ATV were worse than he thought, but since he was drunk and just adrenaline going, like, that can keep you going for a bit, and then he got into an argument with someone, maybe wandered off. Even when you get, like, a bad head injury, sometimes you don't realize it, and that's why they tell you, like, don't go to sleep if you have a concussion, because you can die.
Yeah.
So could it be something like that? Or was he injured, then he walked off and like fell, and maybe that's what the blood is? Like, did he just fell and hit his face again really hard, or his head? Like, the blood is from something. It was pretty far away from his body, so could he have fallen, gotten back up, and kind of then succumbed to all of his injuries? That could be one thing.
I have so many questions too about the ATV accident. Like, was he the only one in the ATV? Like,
it said several men, remember?
Oh, yeah, several men. So, like, if it was that, like, so if the ATV accident was that bad that he got those injuries, why is no one else injured?
But even, like, maybe he was just in the wrong spot where if it flipped, like, maybe it crushed his head or hit his head.
And even when you think about, no, it's not the same, but when we did the golf cart deaths.
I was thinking that one too. Like,
the
they died from a golf cart.
But the husband survived. So I guess it just depends on the point of impact and things like that too.
Yeah. So that's like one thought in my head. But the other thought is there was some sort of fight. I don't think anyone like intentionally murdered him, but maybe something happened, there was a fight, they
I can't even
beat the shit out
imagine
of him.
after 4 days of drinking, or even 3 to 4 days of drinking, how
And not
messy,
sleeping.
yeah, these kids, and like maybe there were drugs involved. Like I just feel like it would have been a very exacerbated situation, exacerbated by lack of sleep, alcohol, drugs, and maybe they just reacted out of rage. Maybe he did do something to someone's girlfriend. I don't know. Like there's a whole bunch of reasons why it could have happened, but it would have just been exacerbated by the situation too.
Yeah, so the other thought would be there was some type of fight. My guess would be at the house,
Yeah.
and then either he wandered off after that and succumbed to his injuries, or people at the house were like, let's get him out of here. Like, he was still alive, but they beat him up really bad and then just kind of dumped him on the side of the road or something.
There is an interesting statement from Caleb Newton, who I'm assuming is Jack Newton's father. So I'm assuming the party happened at Caleb's house, because in this statement he refers to my son lost his best friend, so that is Jack. I'll just read it out because it's kind of interesting, and I guess is a statement from someone who is directly involved. He said, "I've not posted anything because I have no idea what to post other than my family has lost an extended member that felt more like inner family. My son has lost his best friend and was helpless, just waiting on information to come in from whoever is head of this investigation now. I hear that it gets moved from entity to entity, but I'm not even sure where that information comes from." This is all basically one
It's really
sentence.
incoherent.
So I'm trying to kind of break it up, but this is all one sentence. He goes, "I'm not sure where that information comes from. I am sure that with this many kids hanging out, there are very few windows that a recorder wasn't recording what was going on that night. I'm not sure why it is taking the investigators so long to put the night together and to see what happened, but the rumors and the stories that our community have come up with can't be doing anything but slowing this investigation down, especially if you expect them to follow all the leads. In the last few days, I've heard that I've been arrested, I've heard that I've bought a lawyer, and I've heard that my wife has left me. Where this stuff comes up out of thin air, I cannot wrap my head around it. I have been questioned by the investigators because I was the first parent on the SEAM, SEAM, you mean scene, and they wanted to know my take of the situation when I arrived. If anybody has any questions, as I have done with the family, I can tell you what I know, but I promise it's not much, and I have way more questions than answers. The last time I saw Noah was Saturday. I love him, or in loves him. I'm not entirely sure what that means. But anyway, he says, and the boys were getting some Subway. They were about to head for Terrell. I kicked him in the butt and told him to be careful, like I've done to him since he was 5. I wish I would have hugged them now, but there is no way to know when it will be the last time you get to see somebody. We sure do appreciate the family, friends, and neighbours that have come together to check in on us. It means a lot." So again, he doesn't seem to know much, or he's not saying if he does know anything, but just an interesting statement from the people who had the house where the party was at.
Definitely. I don't know. The whole thing is just, there's a lot of unknowns.
I obviously, like, I feel like this is a small town. I wonder if the police are equipped to do this investigation properly. I don't know. It seems, and it does remind me a lot, as we've spoken about it, of the Murdochs, where they're just kind of how much is actually happening based on who was involved or what happened at the time.
Yeah. So that's really it with that one. I mean, is there anything
No, I know.
else
I
you
feel like
think,
it's a little bit of a different episode because there is a lot of conversation, because essentially we don't have any answers. The only answer we have is that he died from blunt force injuries. That's it. We don't know how that happened. So it's a little bit different. I feel like surely there has to have been something happened to him. I don't think this was an accident. I don't think it was a hit and run. I don't think he died after the ATV accident. I feel like something else happened after that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That's something happened.
Yeah.
That's all we know.
I feel like it absolutely seems like there was some altercation. I don't know the reason, and that it seems like multiple people were involved. That's about the extent of what I can assume will likely be the outcome.
Yeah, agreed. Unless the only non-altercation I could think of is maybe if the ATV accident was bad enough, and then
Yeah.
he was like very, very injured from that. But then still, I guess, like, how likely is it that he would have walked that far that injured? I don't know. So hopefully there will be more information out about this eventually. We can hope, and that his family gets some answers
I
as
do
to what
hope
happened to him.
that the investigation is being conducted properly. I know that like the Facebook group is like Justice for Noah. A lot of people believe that it wasn't, rightly probably so that it wasn't an accident, but hopefully they will actually be able to uncover what happened.
Yeah. So we will keep you guys posted, post on Instagram and all that. And since this is Patreon, obviously we always talk in the Patreon chat, so we'll be keeping an eye out on this one.
If you want to read the whole autopsy too, the whole entire autopsy is on the blog. We've gone through the main things, but if you do want to have a look at the whole report, it's on the blog.
All right, so we've got to go record another long episode. So, and let us know what you guys think. I'm curious about this one, what everyone thinks. All right, talk to you guys later. Bye.
See ya.